Want more cash flow from your multifamily investments, but maybe you're not sure or you're afraid that the tenants will want to move on if you increase the rents?
Today we're going to talk about how to maximize your cash flow without increasing the risk of your tenants moving out.
If you haven't already, click the subscribe button below and ring the bell so that you get notified every week when we drop a new video.
One of the best opportunities as a multifamily real estate investor is finding properties that already have tenants in them.
Yeah, but the owners were too afraid to increase the rent.
So as the years go by, rents keep climbing as far as the market's concerned. When you find a property where it hasn't, that creates a huge opportunity for you to go fix up the property and start charging market rents.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is be the landlord that doesn't increase rents, because that ultimately decreases the value for the next buyer.
All right, so let's talk about how to keep your rents at an absolute maximum. So one of the things you need to do every single year is you need to evaluate what the market rents have become. You know, when you're just operating a property, and basically when I say operating, your third-party property manager is operating the property for you, sometimes you lose touch with what's going on in the market as far as the rents are concerned, because you're not the one advertising, you're not the one talking to tenants, etc. So at least once a year, you need to find out, where do things sit with this property? How much are the rents now? What you're typically gonna find is that every year, year over year, the market rents have at least creeped up, and you don't wanna get too far behind. So how do you do that kind of research? Well, there's really two primary ways that we use to evaluate what the market rents are at any given time. First is just really being in touch with our property manager and calling and talking to other property managers in the area. And typically we do that through, shopping, like, hey, we're considering bringing our properties to you. We'd like to get an idea for what you think we could rent it for, etc. All right, I call that kind of like the softer science part of it. The other side, the part that I really, really, really like, it gives you real data to look at and make decisions on, is using a website called Rentometer. It looks like Rentometer. So it's www.rentometer.com, but we call it Rentometer.
I mean,
we don't say
some people say Rentometer. Some people say Rentometer. Tomato, tomato. You say potato, I say vodka.
It's amazing. So it's this website where they go and pull. Now, it's not free, although you can use it for free to get general information. But look, if you're going to be in this business, be willing to put out a little bit of money to get the proper data to maximize the value of your property. Like, this is not something that you want to cheap out on. And at most, it's going to be $100 a year to get 50 things, and they have, or like 50 reports, and they have specials throughout the year, etc. So you want to get the premium version, but basically what they do is you put in the address of the property, and you put in how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and then you tell it, print the premium report, and it's going to give you a map of your property and all the properties around it in whatever time frame you've asked. So you said, if you said, show me everything that's rented over the last 12 months, it's going to give you a 12-month history. And you can select in there if you're looking for, like duplex or house, or is it an apartment, so that you're comparing apples to apples depending on what your unit is. So you want to look at other units that are similar unit type to yours, similar unit size, similar, bedrooms and bathrooms, etc. So it gives you a list of everything that's rented, and then what you're doing is you're literally going through the list and you're finding the handful that are the most similar to yours, and then from there you're looking at the proximity to where yours are on the map, and that really helps you to get an idea of what you can rent it for. And then you further have a conversation with your property manager, make sure they're on board, and then you proceed with whatever you're going to do, which we're going to talk about next.
Let's just say that you assessed the market and you've determined your rents are below market average, but you're not too far off. A couple of things that you can do. You can actually give the resident notice based on the lease. So as it's coming to an end, that's when you can notify them that the rents are gonna go up to the market rents, right? Let's just say when you do that and you give that notification at the end of their lease that you're a little concerned it might push them over the edge and make them wanna leave, there's another strategy that you can do. You can offer a shorter term lease. So let's just say it's 6 months, but you can use what we call a nuisance increase in the rent. So a nuisance increase is kind of like, and we probably all had it, but I remember in my 20s getting a notice from the apartment complex that said, yeah, your rent's going up by $25 a month. And I was like, what's the point? Fine. You can offer shorter terms on the lease, and you can increase the rent in 6-month increments. So like maybe you need to increase the rents by $100 in the span of a year. The first 6 months you offer it, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a $50 a month increase, and then they can sign on for another 6 months, and maybe we do it at 25, right? So you're almost there. Then you just continue to do that nuisance increase strategy. It's pretty good.
Yeah, because who's going to move over a $25 increase over the course of a year? How much is that, like $300?
Right.
It's going to cost
That's
way more
U-Haul.
just to move.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a really good strategy. Hit the like button. Show us a little love.
Yeah, help us chase the carrot. Why do you think it is that landlords don't increase rents?
I know why they don't increase rents, because they're afraid. Like, they're afraid that the tenants are going to move out. That's the biggest thing. Everyone's afraid of, having a vacancy, and vacancy is like the most expensive expense that we have as landlords. So they just don't. Or, this is even worse, or they become friends with the tenants. So that's more of a problem if you're self-managing. And we do not condone that. Like, we want you to have a life of freedom, not a life being tied with a chain to your property. But it is one of the things that comes with managing your own property. You're talking to the tenants, sometimes you form a relationship with them or a friendship, or you feel bad because now you've blurred the lines between business and personal, and now you feel bad about increasing the rent. In fact, remember Steve's 18 unit in Miami? Yep. So one of our students bought an 18 unit building in Miami, and one of the things that made it such an amazing opportunity is that the landlord had self-managed this 18 unit for like 20 years, a really long time. There were people in there that hadn't had their rent increased in so many years, so much so that some of the market rents were $600 below market. Like, market rent was like $1,000 and they were only paying $400. And she just wouldn't do it. She felt bad for them. Anyway, so Steve had an opportunity to come in and start fixing up the place and getting market rents. And actually several tenants, they just were like, we really don't want to move, because it was in Miami and it's hard to find a place that's going to be any cheaper. So they ended up just increasing the rent and paying market rent without him having to do anything. So I think that's really the biggest thing, is self-management makes people not be willing to make hard business decisions that are data-driven, and just that fear.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Comment below if you happen to be in a self-managing situation, like if you're running your own building and you need some help, don't know how to raise the rents, or if you can sit here and envision yourself, oh my God, when I do get my building, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. Drop a comment below and we'll give you some advice and some tips on how to do it without feeling like you're being harsh or driving people out. Okay, now that we know we need to increase the rents and get them up to market rents, right? Now that we know that, but how is that going to impact you? What's that going to look like? So from a 2 to 4 unit, a small multifamily property perspective, what it does is it increases your cash flow. And that doesn't necessarily impact the value of that property, because it's not valued the same as apartments. But what it does do is, the next person that's going to come in and buy it, you want to have had a valuable asset that's performing as much as possible for them. So you're leaving a little bit of meat on the bone for them as you're selling that asset and moving on. You don't want to be the landlord that's sitting there $600 below market rents and handing this over, because it's not going to be an attractive deal for anybody that's trying to get into it, right? They're going to, no, that's not for me. So that's the first thing that you need to consider, is the cash flow. And when you go to get out of it, making it more of an attractive deal for the next buyer.
But between 2 to 4 units and 5+ units, there's this separation, this divide in the world of real estate. 2 to 4 units is considered residential. And that's why when Jen says that, if you increase the rents, it doesn't necessarily technically increase the value of the property, because it's based on comparable sales. But it's totally different when you're in apartments, 5+ units. So let's talk about, if you have an apartment building, 5 or more units, how does increasing the rents impact you there? All right, so let's use an example of a 10-unit apartment building, right? Nothing huge, a great starter size building. So when you increase the rents, the first thing it's going to increase is the net operating income, all right? And the cash flow. Just like with a 2 to 4 unit, at the end of the day, what you have left in your bank account is going to depend on how well you run the property. Well, raising the rents is going to impact your cash flow directly, but it actually has a much, much, much bigger impact on the value of your property. So let's say we have a 10-unit property, and over the course of time, the market rents have pulled away from us by $50 a month, right? Not that much. Like, you're pretty darn close. Good job. Or is it? All right, so let's just take 10 units times $50 a month per unit. All right, so $50 a month, that's per unit, right? So that's $500 a month for the whole property that you're basically like missing out on. But that doesn't seem like a big deal. But how much is that over a year? That's $6,000. All right, well, $6,000 can get you at least, part of a really good vacation, or it can give you a really good small vacation, right? So that's not chump change to your cash flow. But a much bigger issue is what you're doing to the value of the property. So there's something called cap rate when you get into apartments. And the cap rate combined with the net operating income is going to impact the value. So for example, and we have other videos that go into depth on this, and this is a subject that can get very long-winded, so let me just cut it short for you and just give you some basic calculations. Let's say that you're in a 10 cap market. What that means is properties in that market trade or sell at a cap rate of 10%, meaning net operating income is 10% of the purchase price. All right, so if you're missing out on $6,000 a year in net operating income and you're in a 10 cap market, what does that do for the value? The way that you figure that out is you take that missing cash flow or that missing NOI and you divide it by the market cap rate. So in this particular case, we'd take $6,000, divide it by 10%. That means that just by missing out on $50 a month per unit, you've basically robbed yourself of $60,000 in equity. And that equity turns into real cash when you go to sell, which means you're robbing yourself of $60,000 cash in the bank.
Like if somebody said, hey, do you want to take $50 and turn it into 60 grand?
Right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it really comes down to a lot of people when they're getting into multifamily real estate, they really don't realize how those little steps that you take, those little things you do to operate with maximum efficiency and proficiency your portfolio, it can make a huge difference to the tune of millions of dollars over the course of your investing career. Just one little $50 change, but you start adding that up with multiple units, multiple buildings. Wow, I mean, we get into big numbers. Now we're talking about a 10 cap. I mean, 10 cap markets hardly even exist at this point, right? So the lower the cap rate is, the higher the impact on the value. And let me explain kind of numerically how that works. Let's say that we're in a market that's a 5% cap rate. So for example, like right now, Miami is probably in that range, maybe 5.5% cap rate. That's where things trade for. It means people are willing to pay more for the property, even though the return is only 5%. It's a more valuable market. So in Miami, that $50 a month that I'm not willing to get my rents up on a 10-unit building, I'm gonna take that $6,000 per year, divide it by 5%.
That's 120.
Yeah, like $120,000 just by $50 a month. Like this is some serious cash we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I know most people don't realize that. So you wanna get in the habit, even if you're getting ready to buy your first duplex, it's all about establishing those habits early on and not living in, oh, I'm afraid the tenant's gonna move out. You literally, year after year after year, you always evaluate how much is my rent compared to market? And if you're already pretty much at market, then at a minimum, do the nuisance increase. Even if it's 15 or 20 bucks, like always raise the rents because the value that it's gonna have over the long term, you might be buying a duplex right now, but down the line, eventually you're gonna wanna buy a 10, 20, 50, 100 unit building. And that's where those disciplined behaviors really start to impact your overall financial health.
1000%. Manage your asset from day one. If you do want to get into multifamily real estate investing, but you're not sure what's the first step, the second, or the third, you can click the link in the description below and a member of our team will hop on the phone with you and talk about your goals, your resources, and how we can hold your hand and get you to where you want to be.
The other thing we want to tell you is that we have a free Facebook group. It's called Multifamily Real Estate Investing. So if you want to be around people that are like you on the journey, looking to learn, come join us in that Facebook group. We do tons of free education and content there. And every week, Jen and I make ourselves available for a question and answer session. It's live, it's in Zoom, we're face to face. You gotta come to the Facebook group, register, go to events, and then we'll see you there. But any questions you have about real estate, we're there to answer them for you.
And if you want to learn more from us, watch this next video on how much would a fourplex make. See you next week.